Hamilton. This motion is about lost opportunity. The finance minister has squandered the healthy treasury that was left to him by the previous Conservative government and the balanced budget that came with our prudent management of public finances. A balanced budget is not an aspirational goal for the next century. It's something that Canadians expect in this decade or before. An absolute vacuum of leadership exists in the Liberal Party today. Canadians have yet to hear a coherent question period response from the Prime Minister since his party lost the popular vote in the last election, which is the same arrogant approach the Prime Minister took before the election. Canadians deserve better. Canadians are now asking the question, is Canada broken? The answer I'm hearing from Canadians from all walks of life is yes. The failed, divisive policies of this government are breaking Canada apart. And there's no doubt the recent events of late, Canada is at a turning point. During a recent question period, my colleague from Alberta politely asked if the Prime Minister wanted to keep Alberta in Canada. Canadians are still waiting for an answer. Can we move forward in this changing world of 2020, awash in manufactured fears about the weather and phony policies like carbon taxes, which do nothing to help the environment, but everything to do with raising taxes to reward Liberal Party favorites? Can we overcome the economic, social, and political unrest this government has created by making promises to Indigenous Canadians and giving an Aboriginal woman a prominent seat at the cabinet table, only to purge her from the Liberal Party for standing up for the rule of law in Canada? The fired former Justice Minister passed the democracy test with flying colours. The Prime Minister failed Canadians miserably with his treatment of a strong woman. Happy International Women's Day, Mr. Prime Minister. That's a powerful message the groper sent to women and Aboriginals. Actions speak louder than words. Canadians...
The Honourable Member for Hull-Elmore has a point of order.
I believe it's against the rules of this House to refer to other honourable members in any disparaging terms. I think if the Speaker were to take a look at the record, she would find that she had referred to an honourable member as a groper.
Does the honourable member wish to withdraw her wording?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe that's a matter for debate.
The use of words is not a matter for debate, and I would definitely recommend that we look into the Hansard, but I do believe that the word was inappropriately used.
Madam Speaker, if the word appears in the list of inappropriate words, I shall retract it. So, actions speak louder than words, and Canadians are very wary of an effort to incite hatred and suspicion. Canadians are not a violent people, and it's time for the Liberal Party to quit using law-abiding citizens like firearms owners to whip up their left-wing base. The Liberals need to stop wasting taxpayers' dollars to create problems that only cause divisiveness. Today's motion requires information paid for with taxpayers' dollars to be made available to all Canadians. I can understand why this government refuses to be open and transparent with Canadians when we see where this government is paying for advice from and what with has been made available. The former Minister of the Environment took the step to create the Canadian Institute for Climate Change and handed them $20 million of our taxpayers' dollars for a report supporting her view. And I quote from independent analysis by the informed observer, Parker Gallant, in no relation, on what that $20 million in taxpayers' dollars bought Canadians. Quote, should one read a report titled Canada's Top Climate Change Risks, issued in July 2019 by the expert panel on climate change risk and adaptation potential, you would probably think that Charting Our Course report recently issued by the Canadian Institute for Climate Choices, the CICC, was an update, but it wasn't. What a comparison of the two reports highlight is words spoken by the former Minister of the Environment, who said, if you repeat it, if you say it louder, if that is your talking point, people will totally believe it. The latest CICC report exemplifies her quote, and us taxpayers have provided the CICC with $20 million to ensure we totally believe it. The first report's expert panel are part of the Canadian Council of Academies. The council, launched in 2002, has managed to survive on $45 million of our tax dollars for the past 18 years. They're required to produce 5 reports annually when directed by the federal government. The report on Canada's climate change risk came about as a result of a direction from the Treasury Board of Canada. 7 individuals on the CCA's expert panel and workshop participants are part of the CICC's expert group, and another 8 of those experts at the CICC were also cited as references in the CCA's report. One of those was Blair Feltmate, chair of the Intact Centre at Waterloo University. Needless to say, both reports lean heavily on insurance industry's information about how climate change has increased insurance claims. Catastrophes are forecast in both reports, and similar comparisons are made to past events, blaming them on climate change. The latter includes the Fort McMurray wildfires, with an estimated insurance claims of $1.4 billion. The CBC reported on the fire, stating, provincial wildfire investigators have established that the fire was most likely the result of human activity. On page 2 of CCA's report, they have a map of Canada and have highlighted 10 of Canada's top climate change risks. And one of them is the lower Great Lakes water levels, affecting shipping, hydropower production, and recreation. As noted, the CCA report was published in 2019, 2 years after Ontarians were told that Lake Ontario had just experienced a 100-year flood. Even worse flooding occurred in 2019, setting new records. Apparently, the experts involved in preparing the report failed to absorb the well-publicized news at that time and said nothing about Plan 2014. End of quote. Plan 2014, for the benefit of Canadians who have not heard of this, is the policy of the federal government to create 26,000 hectares, or 64,000 acres, by flooding homeowners in the Lake Ontario St. Lawrence water basin. That includes the Ottawa River watershed. And what happens when homeowners who are being adversely affected by catastrophic flooding dare to question the Liberal policy to flood their homes? They're viciously attacked by the Liberal government, hand-picked Liberal appointees shilling that policy. Canadian co-chair Pierre Gallant is one of 3 recent Liberal appointees on the International Joint Commission that's overseeing Liberal flood policy. I found his comment to the volunteer president of the United Shoreline Ontario telling her to effectively shut up deeply offensive. His shallow attempt at a superficial apology after he was called out for his comment was even more offensive when he dismissed the concern of flood victims. For the record, here's the response to Chairman Gallant from the president of a group of flood victims trying to get a fair hearing from an insensitive government who paid $20 million of taxpayer dollars to hear that the problem with the lower Great Lakes is not enough water. Yes, you have deeply offended. As a woman and as a mother and as a homeowner, a flood survivor, as a volunteer and as an advocate, and as a Canadian with a right to be heard and not dismissed by those in power. Thank you for your explanation justifying why I was so deserving of your response. We consider our position to be balanced and evidence-based. We are asking for balance. Your description of my bias is your own. To address your claim, we indicate that 2050 is foreseeable while also explaining that nobody can predict. If you listen to the recording at both the Toronto and Kingston events this week, you will hear exactly which is being repeated at all events. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. Perhaps you might consider how shipping has an exclusive focus and hydro has an exclusive focus, both of who are extremely well-funded and have incredible power and access to both the IJC and the media. The shoreline is unfunded, unrepresented, and absolutely exhausted from trying to desperately be heard. Your flippant, misogynist, and rude email has simply reinforced the shoreline does not have a respected nor genuine position at the table. I will resign from the USO effective May 1st under advisement that the Canadian chair of the IJC has suggested her to take a break. And that's end of quote. Liberal appointee Gallant has lost all credibility with Canadians.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Hull-Elmer.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Puis j'ai écouté avec une certaine... J'étais un peu perplexe d'écouter les commentaires de ma collègue devant moi du Parti conservateur quand elle avait dit que ce qui a soulevé, puis tout ce qui a sous-tendu son discours, c'était la notion que the manufactured fears about the weather. Madame la Présidente, j'aimerais juste lui poser la question. Est-ce qu'elle est au courant que plus que 96% des scientifiques du monde s'entendent sur une chose, c'est que le fait que les changements climatiques sont à la base causés par les activités humaines.
Member for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke.
Madam Speaker, that is not what we're debating today. His arrogance is astounding even for a Liberal. Now, if Pierre Gallant will not do the honourable thing and resign to the Minister of Global Affairs, who is accountable for the IJC in Parliament, will you do the right thing and remove him from the board of the International Joint Commission now, before the next flood season? And this needs to happen immediately if the Government of Canada wants any confidence in the Canadian representation on the IJC. With bad advice come bad decisions. And historians believe that a 50-year perspective is needed to analyze events. Many believe that history will not be on Canada's side in terms of the poor record of this government.
Questions and comments, not the speech. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Hull-Elmer.
Je vois que je suis l'unique député qui aimerait lui poser des questions. Alors, au lieu de répondre